This is INCRadio, DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.
The power.
Conversation.
It could change your whole life.
INCRadio Chatline.
Conversations that matter.
So, are cliques cool or is inclusion ideal? That's what we're going to talk about today on Chatline. So, we have a bunch of people from different places today, and I would like your thoughts. Do you guys think cliques are cool or should inclusion be the ideal? Any thoughts from our friends out there?
I think we need to define
Inclusion.
We need to define some terms, though.
Okay. Well, what do you guys think cliques are?
I mean, cliques in itself, it's like a group of friends. Like this is like when you say you have like this is your clique. This is like kind of like they're your people, your group of friends. Like let's say where if you see them at a gathering, you immediately you just you have that circle around you. You're with them during that event. Like for me, that's like what cliques are.
There's like an exclusionary aspect to it. Like you have a group of friends and you're tight knit, and you're not necessarily just gonna let anybody join in. Does that sound about right?
Yes, I agree. Groups of individuals that's why they call it clique, right? Because they have a lot of either commonalities together or they have what it takes to be in a group because they have that, I guess you can say, belongingness of knowing that they have each other. And therefore, if another person wants to be in a clique, it'll be a little bit more challenging or difficult unless they actually have something in common with that group.
I have the typical stereotypical like movie idea, like the jocks, right? And the cheerleader. That's what I think of when I think of cliques.
Don't they?
It's like the group.
It is definitely associated with like.
I don't know if it still exists today.
The popularity,
in every high school movie, every high school movie, there's like they do call it the clique.
yeah, they do. But
I've definitely seen like two sides of the coin when it comes to cliques. Like I've seen those that were very exclusionary, and it didn't matter like what you did, you were never getting into that group. And then I've been in like very inclusionary, like whenever you saw somebody that oh hey, I think they could join us, you really wanted them to join your group. So I think it depends. Like I don't think we can necessarily qualify cliques as being like good or bad. It really just depends on the group of people. If they're really bad people, you're probably going to have a bad clique going on.
Yeah, but that like sort of like movie definition we were talking about like earlier, it makes cliques sound like it makes it sound like if you're not like let's say the jocks, the nerds, that the different cliques, if you're not of that, if you're not a jock, then you don't belong with the jocks. If you wear glasses, you wear polo shirts like me, and they're all like all the buttons are closed, and you hold a lot of books, then you belong with like, the nerds like clique. Like it makes clique sound like that. Like if you don't fit, if you're you don't fit with the majority of the group, then you can't be part of it. I feel like that's what it makes clique sound like that.
Ren says he's with the nerds. I think we should probably start off like saying what clique we probably belong to the most when we were in high school. What do you think? Like, I'll go first. So like, I think I ran in like a whole bunch of different cliques, but it mostly revolved around music, like punk music. And so like like playing really angry music seemed to dictate like a lot of my friends. Although I was never exclusionary. I made friends with like anybody in high school really if they were cool. EJ, what about you? What clique were you in? And then just pass the ball to someone else.
I was with like the anime kids, but like specifically the ones who like to draw. So like we have our corner like in the classroom where we would just. I remember we were all working on like like drawing a comic. I was doing the story. Someone else was doing the art. Someone else was doing the backgrounds. Like we were. That was like my clique in high school. But how about you, Melby? Like, I'm curious. What's your clique in school?
Just like Nate, I didn't really have a problem getting along with people or different individuals. I just would rather be more, I'm more comfortable hanging out with the friends that I know that, yes, we do have a lot of things in common. We either grew up together or we're just really close friends. And we just, like what the word says, click, right? But in terms of who do I clicked with, majority of them would be from the theater arts, from the dance, and sports. Because I was part of the theater club before when I was in high school, as well as we did a couple of performances as well in terms of dance. And I played basketball and volleyball and I was also in the track in high school. So I made a lot of friends.
You're like physically active. Theater and then sports.
The one I really wanted to do was actually choir or singing, but I just couldn't do all of the after school activities. I had to make tough choices. So I chose those three. I also did cheerleading back in high school, but I was friends with them, but I never really hung out with them for the most part. How about you, Tony?
Me?
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
Oh, no,
I
I'm
think it's you, Tony.
I was trying to think because I feel like maybe more in middle school I belonged to certain cliques, but we were more tight knit. I don't know. We were more tight knit. I was fortunate to be a part of like a small like tight knit like class in middle school, but then once I got to high school, I feel like it was the total opposite. I was just a loner. I would talk to whoever would talk to me, but I would be the girl that would be okay with sitting by herself at the table, like eating her lunch. Then whoever would come up to me would just come up to me. I don't know that I belong. I would probably, if I had joined band, which is I always talk about that being my number one regret. I probably would have been like Nate. I would have been like with the music kids, but I sadly was not.
I would have guessed you would have been part of the wizard school clique. If you know what I mean.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I wish, but I sadly was not. I don't know that I have one. What cliques are there? I'm trying to think. Like I wasn't super athletic. I'm not really
I
like
mean, outside of
nerdy.
movies, I think clicks become more. They sort of become more complex. you know, like
Yeah, I can see that.
with Melby earlier, like she didn't fit with just one click. She fit in like a lot of different groups. So it's like outside of movies, like movies simplify it, but like if you look at it in real life, there's different, like there's different, uh, clicks that you kind of fit into. Like because you won't have just one interest, right? I like drawing, but like when Melvi said that she also did theater, that's like one of the things I wanted to, like that I wish I did back in high school. So I was like a little bit jealous. So that was also an interest. That's also an interest of mine, And given the opportunity, I probably would have been also, part of that clique as well, you know.
See, I was not in any cliques whatsoever. Even though I had all different kinds of friends, I never felt like I was in any clique of any kind. So I would know people and I would say hi to people, but it wasn't, like, oh, I only hung out with the jocks or the nerds and all that stuff. So I think I'm more like Tony, where I was okay with being by myself, but there was never a time that I was by myself because I would always be able to hang out with somebody. And so I never decided to like be part of a clique.
I
I
always
Mhm.
was
thought it
by
was
myself.
interesting, like when you bounce around between the cliques, how much your friends in different cliques like they don't get along, or they'll talk about how they really dislike certain people, and you're like, oh, those are my friends too. It's kind of awkward.
And that does happen, because especially like with the nerds, they don't like the jocks and all that stuff, your typical movie thing that EJ keeps talking about. Sometimes it was like that in real life, but I think, I don't know if I was like the mediator, and I'm like, no, that's not true, they're not like that. But I know with some people, they'll just go along because they want to fit in with that group. But I was always the one that said, no, they're not like that.
I like what Flo said there in the live chat. She said, "I just go with whomever my friends are." I feel like that
Yeah,
just
I wanted to
in
bring that
flow.
up as well. I feel like if you like, let's say, like you kind of grew up with like, this, these friends, this group. I feel like they also affect like your interests, like as you're growing up, right? They also affect it. So in a way, that might also affect like what clicks you become a part of. What do you guys think?
But is it the same when you're older? Like, are there still like the jock like the jocks and
I
like
don't
the
know. I feel honestly, I feel
like
like
in your
that's
adult life?
more of like a school thing, you know, like
Yeah.
more of a school. Like when you're like once you leave school, it sort of becomes kind of like a free for all,
Yeah,
where
it
it's
does.
like you just have these people with like different, different kinds of interests. You might jive with them with this with this particular interest, but with like they might have an interest that's different from you, that they also have friends for
So,
that particular
so
interest.
EJ, when you said you think it ended with school, what about in the work environment? Do you guys encounter any of that in your work environment?
Specifically to my experience, no, I don't know. But I can definitely see it happen in workplaces. But from my experience, I haven't experienced anything like that. But how about you guys?
Because in my workplace, we have a few of the instructors who are newer, and then a few who's been there for years. And the ones who's been there for years always try to exclude all of the new ones, and they just want to stick together with what they want to do. And so then it kind of forces all the new ones to become a clique of their own, because now they need someone to like, have each other's back. So I don't know, but that's just at my
Mm,
place. What about you, Nate? How's things at work? Do you guys have cliques there, or?
I mean, I've had like three careers, like three distinct careers. So like when I was a teacher, it was definitely cliques. I mean, that definitely goes back into the whole high school thing, working in a high school. Because you got the coaches, they are the jocks, and then you got the theater and the arts people. They form their own cliques. They go right back to it. And when I was a teacher manager, actually, I knew that certain people they just like to work together, and I just put them together. I'm like, if you like working together, then I'll just keep them together. And then I worked in a military contract, so majority of the guys who work there were former military, and so that was a really fun setting. So it was a bunch of us young guys, and if you know military guys, they love having fun. They're real down to earth. So I really liked that kind of clique, and we were kind of different from like the much older people who had like zero military exposure. Like I had some growing up because the college I went to and the place I lived was a big military town, so I was able to relate with those coworkers a lot more. And then now I'm the loner. I've I have like no work friends like at all, and it's kind of this weird dynamic because I used to, but now everything's like on a flexible work schedule, and they kind of moved our offices, so the people that I tend to associate most with are gone, and I don't know anybody in my new office, and none of them
So
look approachable.
Nate, you brought it up that now that you're the loner, and Tony, you had also brought that up that when you were in high school, you were the loner, right? So, was there ever a time where you guys felt like you needed a fit in, whether it was in a social environment, a work environment, or anything like? Any of you guys ever think that, oh, I don't fit in, and you felt the need that you had to fit in?
Yes.
Yeah,
Elaborate.
becomes
Yeah, one
It
word answer.
it depends, I guess, on the company, because I don't mean company like business. I mean like who you're actually with, because there are times where you just have these different social circles that you get involved in for whatever it may be, whether it's through projects or just by association through other friends. And I guess when people start talking and you say and you kind of like see what their commonalities are naturally, and you don't know how to contribute to the conversation, or you don't feel like you have any like value to bring to what is happening, you're kind of just like, oh, I don't think I belong here, because I'm just kind of listening to all these different things happen. And in that way, like whatever it may be, it's kind of like one example is, this is a very like like surface level example, but let's say they're all talking about K-drama, and that's like they're all into the Korean thing, and you have you want to relate to them, right? You're like, you want to kind of know what they're talking about, but at the same time, I don't want to force myself just because, like that's what they're talking about. I guess that's where I'm at in a more
you're sort of
simplified
just like nodding
example.
in the background, like
Not just nodding, but like on the one hand, like you want to be able to relate, because I think that's what it is. You want to kind of
Mhm.
feel like you have that connection, and that's why you try to. Sometimes you might feel tempted to kind of force yourself, like, oh, maybe I'll try, like maybe I'll try watching an episode, but then you get into it and you're like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know, like
Uh,
going into it for the right reasons versus, yeah. I always use K drama as an example because I always feel out of touch with different things that are happening. But that's my choice, I guess, in the end. So does that answer your question, Arnie? I don't know if I answered your
Yes, it
question.
does. Thank you for
Okay.
elaborating. What about you, Nate? Do you, since you say you're the loner, do you feel like you need to fit in or you want to fit in with the people you're around at work or anywhere else?
No, not really. I mean, I'm fine by myself, working by myself, or being around others. The only thing I don't like is when I feel like my presence is just like disturbing people. I hate that feeling. Like I'm in this group and I'm like, I am the odd man now, and nobody wants me here, and I don't want to be here either. So
Oh, relate.
that is the worst feeling. I don't mind being by myself at all. I could do either. I'm fine with either.
Melvi, was there ever a time where you felt like you wanted to fit in when you didn't feel like you fitted in?
You know what? I'm trying to recall. And I can't recall anything because I'm the type of person who likes to get to know people, who is very adaptable and flexible, and I don't really care what other people think of me. And growing up, I've been exposed to different kinds of people. And I think that experience taught me that even though from Guam or from having to experience island life and then coming here in the United States, especially here in California, when I first moved here, and my first, actually, all the jobs that I've had here, I'm either currently I'm the only Filipino in the building. So that alone can be daunting sometimes or challenging. Or when I first started working, there, and it's been 16 years now since then, I look back and say, wow, I'm really oddball here in this organization. But I thought about it, but when I start getting to know people, I start giving them the benefit of the doubt that no matter how different I may look or how different I may act, that hopefully in time I'll be able to be welcomed as well. Because just like, who was it? Somebody mentioned, I think you already mentioned this earlier, that you have there's these older individuals or a group of people who have their cliques, right? The ones who've been there for a longer period of time. And I've also seen this at work, where I work right now. And then you have the newbies coming in, especially the young ones. And they do feel left out, and I feel bad for them. So what do? I welcome them. Doesn't matter how old they are, whether if they're older than me or younger than me or the same age, it doesn't matter. I welcome them. Because the thing is, when you're working or you're in front of individuals, how you present yourself is how they will perceive it. So it boils down to, I've learned from my own experiences that if I want people to like me and welcome me, I have to do my part. And of course, you have to be authentic. You have to be warm, right? You have to be welcoming. So it all depends on, I guess you can say, your thought process, and how you also speak with how you come across with them, and how they see you is basically the result, whether they're going to speak to you and get to know you or not. But at work, I have had my share of also working with difficult people that no matter what you do or say, it doesn't matter. They're never going to change. So what do? I just let them be, and at the end of the day, I just let them know that work still needs to get done, regardless of our differences. That's
So
it.
I have to agree with something that Flo had typed in, where she says that she learned not to worry about fitting in because of she's older now. And when I was younger, I do remember that I did want to fit in with certain groups, whether it was at work or other social environments. But then now that I'm older, I really don't care if I fit in or not, you know? Like, I'm content with my life. I'm content with who I am. So I really don't care if I fit in or not. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do.
I agree with that, Arnie. Actually, I also saw that comment earlier and wanted to comment on it about like not worrying about fitting in. Then this is kind of like a callback to what Tony was saying earlier, where sometimes you feel like you have to force yourself to enjoy the same things to fit in, and like that was me. That was me before, where I would force myself. I like this isn't really kind of like this show isn't really kind of my type of like show that I like, but I'm gonna watch it just so like when they talk, when if the people I wanted to befriend talk about it, like I can also keep up with the conversation. Like I was that person who wanted to, who 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 thought that I have to fit in. Okay, it's gonna sound harsh. I told myself that I have to fit in, or I'm gonna be the weird kid. So, so I was forcing myself to fit in. But the problem was that they liked me. Yeah, they liked who I was part of the group, but deep down it wasn't like they didn't really know who I was really. Like they didn't know like what the shows that I actually like. They didn't know the music that I actually listened to, because I catered I catered a personality to fit in with that group. Like I catered a personality to fit in with this group, that it like it wasn't really who I was. Like who
So,
like the shows I watch is like different. Like when I'm not with them, it's different. Like it just have that sort of like knowledge. It's not really something that I like. It's just knowledge that I know, just so I can keep up with them. But like now, like I'm trying to change that, where like I'll out the door I'll already tell them, like these are the kind of shows that I like, these are the kind of music I listen to, that I like. And if like if they like me for that, then that's when I know that that's genuine. I'll genuinely get along with you because we have the same we have the same taste and stuff.
but with you saying that, EJ, I'm just curious.
Mm.
Why was it important for you to fit in to the point where even if you didn't like the show, you pretended like you did? Why is it important for us to want to fit in? That's I'm just curious.
I think in like, especially I see this more in like school environments, where your majority of your day is like majority of your day you have to be like in this enclosed space with like these people. So like there's that pressure of wanting to get along with them, or at least wanting to get along with some of them, that you can have your circle, right? The people that you go to, because you don't want to be the wallflower, right? Like if you're not fitting in with any of the groups, you kind of become the person that's just like kind of like at the back of the maybe at like a corner, or like at the wall, just like leaning, looking around the room, seeing all the people, like seeing the people form groups. Like there's that pressure of like wanting to fit in, because like the majority of your day is spent in this in this space. And I think I noticed that it becomes less when we're older, because like yes, there's there's workplaces, but for the most part, we decide where to go. Right? If you're like if you go to the gym, then you're also gonna be there. Like the people you're gonna see there are also there for the same reason, right? It's not like in school where it's more of like kind of like a general thing, right? Where people with different interests are placed in this one space, to find the people that they get along with. So like yeah, it's like kind of like what I think happens, like why it's more it feels more serious when we're kids, when we're students, because of like kind of like the environment of like a school where like as a kid you spend most of your day off, like most of your day on, right?
Mine is a little different. I feel like it was never for like larger groups or just fitting in with people in general, but more specifically within my established friend groups. Because
Mm.
I feel like I've had moments where, you have established friend groups, but then you feel like a disconnect kind of in a way, like when they start, talking about certain things, you're kind of like, oh, I can't relate to that, or like, oh, I don't know, like what I said earlier, I don't know how to contribute if they're having a conversation about something. I don't know how to contribute to that conversation, so that makes me feel, I know they're not doing it purposely, but like I just feel myself personally excluded, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna dip out of this conversation because I don't know how to contribute. So I feel like for me, it's been less about people who are just whoever, but it's more about established friend groups, like that kind of, I can't think of the
I
word
kind of
because it's
feel that
technically not a clique at that point, but
yeah, I kind of feel that too, because I don't know if it's just because I'm like one of like in terms of age, I'm one of like the older in my friend group. So like sometimes they'll have they'll have interests like like trending stuff that I'm not caught up on, just because of like just because- I don't want to use my age as my age as an excuse, but like just being my age, like I guess I don't like spend as much time like really keeping up with like fashion trends or like what's trending in terms of like shows and stuff. So they'll have those interests, and a lot of my friends are also interested in like Korean culture, like K drama, K pop, like the songs, the songs, the shows, and I know next to nothing about those things. So I do kind of like I do kind of feel that as well. Like with like my established like friend group that like you were talking about, where it's um like for most of them, especially if you're like a bit like one of like like the older people in that friend group, like sometimes you're you kind of fall out of like what's popular, what's trending with the generation, right?
I want to add something that you mentioned earlier, EJ, about how you had catered kind of your personality to fit into a group. Um, if you've ever held like a leadership position, and I hold several leadership positions, and what I've learned is like you can't be, cliquish and exclusionary if you're leading a group, right? You're gonna mess up the whole cohesion of your group, right? And so I see that now. I just realized that just now that like, holding a leadership position kind of modifies your personality so that you become more inclusive. Majority of the people of course don't hold a leadership position, so they're, they kind of can afford to form cliques. And then I owe myself like, well, I click. I can be by myself, or I can, move in and out of, different groups just fine, but I kind of have to have like a generic personality when I approach a lot of people. Granted, I still have like, friends where I can, quote unquote, be myself, but you can't deny that that's going to have an effect on you, whenever you have to appeal to a lot of different types of personalities and people.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like it sounds a little bit like like a professional mode, right? That you have when you're like like you're dealing with people in like kind of like a professional setting, like when you're leading them, like in a project or something.
I wouldn't even just say professional, but just being warm to everyone. Like Arnie's example earlier, she would just be like, "Oh, I can hang out with these people. Oh, I can hang out." Like, not that you're changing who you are necessarily, like every time you're with different people, but just
Accommodating, right?
being open, I feel like, is where that's at.
Well, that's my other question now that you bring up changing. Did were there ever times where you guys felt like you were changing or you felt like you had to change just so that you could fit in with that group at any point in your life? Because I remember when I, like I said, when I was in high school, I had friends of all kinds, but a lot of the ones I would hang out with were the jocks because they were all in my class. And so I felt like I had to learn about sports because if I wanted to talk to them, we needed to have something in common, right? So it's not that I changed who I was, but I think I expanded my horizon wherein I started to learn what football was all about, what basketball was all about, so that when they would have conversations, I wouldn't feel like I was left out. So I necessarily didn't change, but I think it helped me expand my thinking. But others, they actually change just to try to fit in, right? Like when you see those movies like Mean Girls and all that, these people feel like they got to be mean just to fit in with, were they the Ashleys? Is that the group of right? They're all the
That was
same.
like 20 years ago.
No, it wasn't, because I'm not that old.
Well, you saw it
Ouch.
when you were 7, right?
Yes. But do you see what I'm saying? So I mean, there's for me, I don't think I my experience was bad because I didn't change like to be a worse person, or I didn't change myself completely, but I was able to expand on my perspectives, and I was able to expand on things that I started to enjoy. Did that ever happen to any of you guys?
Hmm.
I can relate to you, Arnie. I didn't change, but I did expand my horizon just like you. But I did witness somebody change though, trying to be part of our friendship group, and that made me sad. So I actually pulled that person in and I told her, you don't have to change yourself to belong. You're always welcome here, and we'll do our best to help you with the best way we can. And I've also talked to my other friends and say, listen, she is really shy. She's doing her best to fit in, but I think it's about time that we'll let her know that that's not who we are, and that's not the kind of people we want to represent as far as trying to win others or portray a group where, okay, you're only going to belong in our group if you're this type of person. No, everybody should be welcome.
Is that from? I'm curious, Melvis. That like, does that stem from like experience? Like when you were saying earlier, like like you saw someone who was trying to change so they can fit in your group, and you outright told them, you don't have to, change yourself to
Yeah.
fit in with us. Like, does that like stem from experience?
Yes. And I've also seen that at work, and I tell them, don't do that. That's not a good thing. And because I also tell them that you don't have to be someone else to fit in. You just have to work around your way of dealing with these different individuals, because if they're not going to change, you're just going to have to learn to adapt, but not sacrifice your own identity. I think somebody mentioned it on the chat, and not lose yourself over trying to fit in or trying to find a clique or trying to belong. No, that for
Mm.
me, I don't agree with that. You just have to be yourself, because in the end,
I think there's definitely a base level of that people should try to fit in, because in the end you have to function in society. I mean, I'm just talking about like basic manners
Mm.
and things like that. So like when you're out in public, like and you see that now with a lot of like viral social media, people behave literally however they want. And in public spaces, you got to kind of, everyone has to kind of give up a little bit of something right? To space. You can't just truly be yourself. So I think it's knowing where that threshold is, because I do believe you should have your own identity. Because the worst time of my life was when I tried to fit in, like in middle school, high school. I tried so hard to fit in, and I was the most miserable. And I was a lot happier when I was like, I just, do whatever. And then transitioning after that, after high school, and then you into professional uh, spaces, or you meet older adults, and adults are gonna come from all sorts of different backgrounds and cultures. It's like, okay, I want to be myself, but at the same time, I don't want to be, being myself is not, being unappealing to people to where people don't want to associate me with me either. So I think there's kind of like a baseline that people should have when it comes to fitting in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you think about it, in different countries, there are different cultures. Again, we have to learn to adapt, right? And so you can't just say, okay, this is my way of doing things, but it's actually either disrespectful or unacceptable to others. So again, the word I think we use every now and then in our chat line broadcast is being mindfulness and being self-aware. When you have self-awareness, then it gives you that feeling of that that alertness of knowing and how to behave basically properly in front of either what you said in public places or in different atmospheres, different environment. Because yes, you're right, you can still be yourself, but at the same time also learn to kind of know what to do when you're in a predicament where a certain behavior should be done, and that there are some behaviors that are not acceptable, especially when you go out in other countries, for example. That's also my experience.
And I think that's what's sad about our society today is because I've seen it, especially with the younger generation, wherein they try to change themselves completely just so that they can fit in. And what message can we get across to them to let them know that it's okay to be yourself, right? If these people don't like you, somebody else is going to like you. Find the people who likes you, right? Because I don't know
Can
if
I
you guys
speak?
experienced that.
I just want to speak on the other end of also like how cliques can kind of develop too, Arnie. Just because sometimes I don't think it's inherently that people are trying to exclude other people, but like what we talked about before, people have common interests, and we like to cling to that, right? We like to cling to familiarity, what feels comfortable. And sometimes when you're trying to form a connection with someone that is different than you, that has a different background, that grew up somewhere else, it can kind of feel intimidating to make that first step of branching out and being able to say like, oh, I'm going to take the time to find out more about this, even if I can't relate. Because that's how it's been like for me. There are times where it really took me to push myself, because I like what Dante Brule put in the chat. um do not look out for your own personal interests, but also the interests of others. And I think that can speak to how like breaking through, I guess, clicks in that way. Like, even though there could be an established click, the thing that you could do is to worry less about you feeling like you can't relate, and just thinking about, well, what can I find out more about the other person? Because I feel like I've been in my own chamber of, oh, I put the pressure on myself in terms of exclusion, not necessarily that other people were excluding me, but I just felt like, oh, I can't relate to them. I should just not, I should just like be hands off. I'm just not gonna, I'm not even gonna try. Versus like actually making the effort to be like, okay, let me learn more about this. Let me learn more about them and show that, I can take the time to invest in them and just demonstrate that kind of behavior. And then other people can look to that and hopefully do the same.
And I agree with you. I honestly don't think people do it on purpose. Not like the way the movies portray it, where people are they just want to be mean and they really want to exclude people. I think some people really, it's just that it's who they're comfortable with. And that's why they keep hanging out with them. And then I think it's just so hard for them when, let's say, somebody new comes along to include them because they're just so used to the people that they're with. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
The funny thing is, like, you might look at that, like, you're like, oh, they don't like me because they're excluding me. They're not including me in their, I know, in their conversations. But like, what you're not seeing is, and in their mind, they're like, oh no, there's a new person. How do I, like, like what, like what can I say that won't, like, like I'm afraid of saying something and they get mad. Like, you don't know that that's what's going on in their mind. Like, you might be assuming that, like, you might be assuming that, oh, I guess they don't like me because they're not including me. But like, in their mind, they're also freaking out because they want to include you, they just don't know how. But I like what Tony said of, like, like, even if it's not your interest, even if it's like what their interest is not your interest, like, it shows people, like, how much you actually want to be, like, you want to get along with them if you take the time to actually know what their interests are, to know something about their interests, right? Like, what Dr. Brew, like, put there, about, like, looking out for the interests of others as well, right? It's no, it's, I guess it's a healthier version of, like, you're not changing, right? You're not changing your identity to fit the other person, but you're showing them that, hey, like, uh, because I care about you, I care to know what you like, what your interest is, things like that.
So, what are your thoughts? Do you guys think is fitting in the same as being included, or is it not the same?
Hmm. And well, I guess the way it strikes me is, like, fitting in is like you're the one doing, like, the action to fit in, and well, being included is like, or I guess it's like this: fitting in is your part in that exchange of, like, being part of that group, and inclusion is their part in welcoming you to that group. And it kind of becomes like an effort of you're exchanging, you're communicating, right? That that information of, like, we might not all have the same interests, but like, well, what what do we have in common? We both want to be friends. Good. Then, like, I guess inclusion is their part. The way I see it, inclusion is their part. Fitting in is your part. Does that make sense? For
Well,
you
there's
guys?
also another side to this too, where you could have, I've been in a situation before with my friends, where you really wanted to include somebody, and it seemed like they had something in their head that didn't want to fit in, and it was like all in their head, like, I don't fit in with this group, like, I don't want to hang out with these people, and you're just like, no, you're fine. We want you to hang out with us. We want you to be a part of the group, and as much as, like, we put out the effort, like, we invite this person, we reach out to this person, like, they just don't feel like they actually fit in with a group. And the reality was, it's like, no, you actually do. You can hang out with us. So there's like all sorts of sides, and there's all sorts of nuances to this, fitting in and inclusion. Because typically we only fixate on, like, you have a group and we're just excluding people because we're mean, and I'm just trying to fit in, but there's also that other side too, where people want people to fit in, be a part of it. But at the same time, like, I've been in this situation too where people wanted me to join them, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be a part of this group. I don't feel like I have to. I don't feel like I want to.
So, on the other hand, what is it that we can do to make sure that everyone around us feels like they're included? Because I've moved to a lot of different places, and I don't necessarily feel like I need to fit in, or I feel like I'm excluded in any way. But recently, so all the different places I've moved to, I've never had a hard time of fitting in or feeling like I was included, right? But my recent move, I feel like I've been here for a while now, and yet I still feel like I'm not included in any way, you know? So I go, I do my thing, and then I take off and stuff like that because I still feel like I'm not part of any group or I'm not included in any way. So with that, I've learned to, whether it's a school, work, social environment, I want to try to make sure if I see somebody new, somebody I don't know, I'll just go up to them and say hello so that they don't feel like they're not included. You know, what are things that you guys do or suggestions we can give others? You know, what can we do to make sure everyone feels like they're a part of the group or they feel like they're included?
Well, I think you kind of summed it up. It's communication, but also that initiative to have communication. It's like I'm aware this person's new, they're fish out of water. They don't understand K drama. Let me break it down into terms so that they can relate. Right? It's know your audience. And this is what I learned like in a professional setting. A lot of this that we learn in a professional setting. But I think it's that you got to communicate, know your audience, and take the initiative. Whether you are in the group and there's someone who is left out that you want to include, you take the initiative, you introduce yourself, say, hey, I want to introduce you to a bunch of people. Or if you are trying to, be associated with a group, you take the initiative, you start introducing yourself. It works both ways.
But what if you're shy?
Well, you can't be shy. Well, I guess that's the New Year's
you feel it like a band-aid. You get it over. You feel like a band-aid, Arnie. You like.
Well, if you're shy, you're just gonna have to accept the situation.
Yeah.
Really.
Think of it this way: the worst that it can get is just an awkward opening. But they're not gonna. It's not like a show where they're gonna boo you if your introduction wasn't the best, or they're not gonna go they're not gonna go like no, go away. They're not gonna go like that. At least most people that I know, they're not gonna go like that. If you mess up your introduction, right? The worst it can get is just awkward, but the like something that I want to impart to people is that most people are accommodating to that. Like most people understand what it's like to not fit in the first place. They understand what it's like to not be included, and a lot of people, and like most people that I know, are like if they see someone who's struggling, they will be the one to take initiative, especially if it's their it's in it's their kind of like their environment, the environment that they're comfortable with, and there's this new person. Most people that I know will be the one to initiate that conversation of like, hey, like you just like where are you from? You just moved here, like where did you come from? These are my friends here. Like these are like they're also around your age group. Maybe you'll get along with them. Like most people I know are like that because they also understand like that feeling. So if you're someone out there who's like maybe you're going to move to a new place, you're gonna like you have a new job where it's like a new environment, like yes, like you're I get the shyness, I get the being afraid, but like just remember that most people are, and most people will be accommodating to that as well. I'm
What
sorry.
about Tony, what about Tony or Melvi? Any suggestions or words of wisdom you'd like to impart about trying to make people feel included?
I'm one to notice that right away, and I can tell based on their, let's say, gestures and the way they look at others. And I love talking to shy individuals or people who are new because I've been there. And here's the thing, in anything in life that we do, whether if you want to learn a skill or even when it comes to communicating with others, and Nate mentioned this, it all starts with communicating. If you're not going to learn to open up, even if it's little by little, you'll never know the opportunity that you're going to have. Because after all, if we're in a professional setting, we have no choice but to interact. But let's say in a social setting, for example, and you're already shy, you're feeling left out, then find someone in the room who you can basically feel warm with. And I think this is what I do when I'm new at a new setting. So when I know that somebody's new, I help them and I talk to them and make them feel welcome. When I'm the one who is new in the room, what I do is I actually scout the whole place and I go where the food and beverages are. And most of the time, 99.9% of the time, I'm able to communicate with people or with someone. So give yourself an opportunity and give yourself grace as well and learn, because it's the only way we're going to know if something works out is when we try. So hope that can resonate with you as well.
For me, what I will say is that don't underestimate like the power of a smile and just acknowledging people over time. um Sometimes it might not happen right away. Like I feel like we think that connection is something that can I mean, sometimes it does happen instantly, but sometimes it can be little seeds that are sown over time. So if you're consistently like smiling at a person and acknowledging them over time, people will remember people will remember that. They'll remember that about you, and then over time that can um open up an opportunity for you guys to actually talk. And it doesn't have to be big talk. You can start off with small talk, be like, oh, the this snow is really terrible right now, and that can be like a bridge. Like, don't discount that. Like, I know we say like, oh, I hate small talk, but it can actually open up even bigger conversation if you just take that first step, like what Melly was saying. Just try. And for me, like what I'm trying to learn to do is to not be so in my head when it comes to interacting with other people, because I feel like I don't know if this is true for everyone across the board, but I feel like whenever we have interactions, what typically stops us is thinking of what the result is going to be. Like, oh, they're going to think I'm weird. Oh, they're going to think I'm going to mess up what I'm going to say, or there's just a bunch of different things that could go on in your head. But if you like just take that brave moment to say whatever it is, you're like, oh, I really like your shoes. Just very simple things that will like get people to kind of like stop and be like, oh, like they weren't expecting that. um it goes a long way. And just noticing things about people, like, oh, you did a really good job on, if it's like in the workplace, right? Like, and just having that consideration, I think you pay attention, like you follow up, like, oh, I noticed that your kids, like if they have like pictures of their kids like on the wall or whatever, like, how old are they? Just being curious about people, concerned, considerate about people. And it, again, it's not an instant thing, especially if you're dealing with groups that you're trying to like get into. um be more curious about them than you are thinking about your own insecurities and all that stuff. And I know that's really hard. That's really hard. Renz Diaz says smiles creepily. I need to practice that. Yeah,
I
just
just want
however
to
you
say
can.
same. I need to practice my smile. They say practice smiling at yourself in the mirror. So I'll try that.
Just a gentle smile. I don't know, he can smile not creepy. I don't have advice on that, sorry.
And Tony, I agree with you because I think sometimes we think too much, or it's all in our head, where even if we want to fit in, sometimes we think, oh, they might not like me, or things like that. And I think that's the hardest part, is overcoming that, so that you do have the bravery and the courage to just go up to people who hasn't even come up to you yet, right? Nate, show us your smile so you can show Renz what a smile looks like. That's not creepy.
I got the worst smile. Why are you doing that to me? Put me on the spot. Everyone says I look angry, so I'm like, I'm not angry. This is how I look.
Good combo
Please,
though, guys.
somebody unmute.
No, this is a good
There's a
combo
smile.
though.
I do laugh a lot though.
You do. I like your laugh, Nate. Makes me laugh. Contagious.
But and that's my problem too. I laugh when I'm nervous. So sometimes, even with the topic is so serious, I'm laughing. People probably think I'm being disrespectful because I'm just laughing. Hey, I'm nervous. What do I do? Right?
Like now.
Yes, like now. But I want to thank you all so much for joining us today and having this conversation, because inclusion, I think we can all agree is really important. It's important for people to feel like they do belong, but it's also important that you don't lose yourself in trying to belong with others, right? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Definitely.
can agree.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
and don't worry about what others think. You'd be surprised how less actually they think about us because they're worrying about other things. Unless you say something that they'll worry about when they're in front of you, then yes, I'm sure they'll eventually say something or think something. But like I said, do what you need to do and be you. So,
Yeah, in the end, some people just they're just not going to like you. That's just the reality.
yeah, it is
And
indeed.
and
If-
often it's better that who's your friends and who is not your friends. You can go
Yeah.
ahead and not waste your time trying to please people that you will
Oh.
never ever please.
Yep. That's why I let go of the ones that zapped my energy and kept the ones that were true to me.
Yeah,
didn't mean-
and that's true. You really just can't please everybody, right? So, like we said, inclusion is important to everyone, no matter who we are. We always want to feel like we're welcome and included. So, we should take the time to help everyone feel included and not feel left out, right? So, like I said, I want to thank everyone for joining tonight. I know you all are from different places, so thank you so much for joining. And especially to our listeners, thank you for joining us in our conversations. We had some good chats over there. Please tune in again next week, same time, 9 p.m. What's that, Mountain Time? 8 Central? No, 8, no, 10 Central. 8 Pacific.
Back.
Yes, 10 Central,
11 Eastern.
11 Eastern, 8 Pacific.
Yes. So join us again next week on Chatline here on INC Radio, where we have hopefully conversations that matter. So until next week, we will see you all. Adios.
Hi, have a great weekend, everyone.
Guys.
See you next.
No creepy smiles.
Let me always live in the temple.